Q&A and like strategies. So, Tasha.
So you guys met me once, but I'll go ahead and reintroduce myself. My name is Tasha Chang. I've been a realtor for 16 years. I'm a mother of 5, 3 kids biological, 2 I adopted. My youngest is now 22. Let me know if you want some kids, I'm offering them. But, they come with some high bills. They don't get cheaper the older you get. But I'm also the incoming president for ARIA, the Asian Real Estate Association of America, and I am the most controversial president because I'm going against most of my national board and speaking up against things that Asians typically don't speak up against. So I did replace 8 members out of my 10-member board.
Wow.
Smart move. Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Michael Williams. I am currently ANC Commissioner of 8E, which is the Congress Heights area. I'm the chair of that commission. I'm a restaurateur. I'm getting ready to open up a restaurant in Deanwood at the end of this month. And I'm also looking to open up a credit union next year in the Ward 8 area. I'm also ultimately a candidate for delegate. I'm running for Congress here in the District of Columbia on the Democratic ticket.
Cool. Matt?
Okay. I'm Matt Angle, and first of all, I want to congratulate all y'all for this conference and Kevin for the work that you and Dr. Steele and others have done. This is a wonderful gathering. As I said, my name's Matt Angle. I'm founder and director of a political organization called the Lone Star Project. Prior to that, I was worked for a member of Congress for 20 years who represented a majority-minority district. And during that time, I spent 4 years as executive director of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and also 4 years as the executive director of the House Democratic Caucus. And throughout my time in politics, I've been very focused on the preservation, extension, and now the renewal of voting rights as being a fundamental duty of us as Americans, but more important than that, the way that we protect democracy. And as we go through here, you'll see I don't make any apologies about being partisan. I believe that we all have to embrace politics and embrace partisan politics. The Lone Star Project means I'm fighting in Texas. It's rough sledding in Texas. But let me tell you, we operate not in an ideological way, not from the standpoint of liberal, progressive, or conservative or moderate, from the standpoint of in order to win and to promote the policies that we care about, we have to have new leaders. And so that's what I'm focused on.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks. So I'm going to jump right into it. Easy question. The role of money in politics. We're talking about the APAC, and one of the problems we noticed is that the APAC in their response to Dr. Steele said, well, they're the biggest donors to minority candidates in the country. That seemed outsized given the nature of the popular demographics. What do we do to get people more engaged politically, especially financially? Starting with the Asian community and then on down, then Matt, you can.
I would say what we need to do to get any community engaged is start in the schools, start with the children.
Okay.
Because the first place is educating the kids on why focusing on their rights is a priority that they should focus on instead of a video game, instead of TV, instead of hanging out at the mall. They have way too many distractions right now that are leading them away from the politics of this country and taking their minds off the important issues.
Kelly, you're running for office. You've run for office. What do you see as the role of money?
The role of money is paramount in politics. I mean, in some cases, and in very few cases, without money, you're not going to win. Because you have to get your message out, you have to get out there. And as in my case, I'm running against a 34-year incumbent. So you have to be able to, get boots on the ground. You have to get mail out. You have to get flyers out. If you're fortunate enough to be able to do some commercials and video either on Facebook, YouTube, or anywhere else, it all costs money. So it's there. We can thank, Mitch McConnell for that and being able to have it. But I think also piggybacking on what Tasha said, is that we have to educate. The idea, I mean, in DC you have to get signatures. You have to get people to sign a petition to allow you to get on the ballot. And in my case, I have to get 2,000 signatures, which I turn in today, to be able to get on the ballot. So technically, I have to get like 3,000 or more because they'll disqualify some signatures. The number of individuals, particularly African-American individuals, particularly African-American men, who would tell me, I'm cool, I'm not with that, I'm good, I'm not, and I would stop them asking, what you cool about, what you good about, what's going on? They would just look at me like I'm crazy. But I would have to help them understand that you being cool on the street is causing you problems everywhere else. And they don't necessarily equate election, voting, public policy to the systems and the structures that we deal with. And that piece right there is like the hardest nut to crack to help them understand. The best way I've been able to do it outside of DC is, that prosecutor that just put your brother in jail, you can vote him out. That judge that just sentenced him to 25 years to life, you can vote him out. That chief of police that was the one that arrested him, well, you can vote the mayor out because she or he is the one that appointed that chief of police, depending on what district you're in. So you have to bring it down to them to the least common denominator so that it can be tangible to them. And I used to host a podcast called Black Politics Today, and my tagline was, what's at stake? We have to help our people in our community understand what's at stake, because right now, they don't recognize that there is somebody who wants to be a dictator. And when they told me they were going to deport everyone, I said, you're going to be one of those deported. They can't deport me, I'm an American. Yeah, today you are. Tomorrow your butt's going to be on another ship the same way you were when you came over here. And they don't understand that. And I think education is key to what we have to do.
Matt, so you've done this for years, and you've raised money, you've done activism. Why is it that APAC is so outsourced in or such an outsized influence? I mean, especially with the advent of low dollar fundraising, why can't it be more equitable?
Well, first of all, it starts with there's a sense of, within the media and also among a lot of progressives of all colors, and that is that they want to villainize money. Well, the money is not the villain. Some of the donors are villains.
Right.
The Koch brothers are villains. The billionaire Yass in Pennsylvania, who gave $6 million to the governor of Texas in order to promote school vouchers to kill public schools. They're villains, but money itself is not. And as Democrats, we have to understand that you have to raise money in order to tell your story. We're always frustrated that we're not hearing our story, we're not getting our message out, but we don't put it through a megaphone. Instead, we just shout out the window. You got to actually amplify it, and the way you amplify it is with money. There are some groups that know that and understand that through culture and through tradition. APAC has spent a lot of money. They've seen the value of making investments. And so they make oversized investments where they can make a difference. And you see that a lot happening within primaries, particularly within Black and Hispanic primaries, because there's so little money spent otherwise, that if you put in a lot of money, you have an outsized difference. In Texas, the cryptocurrency PACs came in and spent millions of dollars in one congressional race. They took it to a close race to one of the candidates winning, going away. Now, that candidate, there's nothing wrong with that candidate, but they had an outsized influence in who won. And so we have to embrace not only the need to have money, but that it's a good thing to raise money. And candidates who raise money, they aren't bugging you, they're doing their jobs. A big part of being a good candidate is to raise money.
And let me add to that. We as African Americans have a problem with contributing to campaigns. We don't understand the value of contributing to a campaign. When I first got in politics, I made a $25 contribution, didn't know what I was doing. My mother told me to do it, I did it. But in that meeting or in that fundraiser, I met the president of the bank that was right down the street. And when I started talking to him and telling him who my mother was and that what I was doing and everything else, and how I wanted to get a business loan and do this and do that, he's like, oh, have you gone to my bank yet? I was like, oh, no, I didn't know you had a bank. What's your name? Where are you going? I went to his bank, filled out the application. Now, I don't know if I had the credit score. I don't know, but I got the loan. And I know I got the loan because I had told them, oh, so-and-so told me to come in here and fill out this application. We have to recognize the value of $25 and $2,500. We have to recognize, because the $2,500 is going to get you at the seat at the table up here. That $25 may keep you back there, but at least you're in the room. So you have to recognize that we have to contribute to campaigns. People we wanted to help elect, get out, get boots on the ground, walk precincts, contribute, make phone calls. We have to do our part. We're too busy sitting back waiting for them to do something, and then we want to bitch, cry, and complain when it doesn't go our way.
I'd like to add to that
Go
really
ahead.
quick. And so I have seen billionaires run for office with unlimited means, and they failed. And I have seen candidates with limited means, and they prevailed. The difference was the education that they provided. They educated the public on what they were going to do for that public and why the public needed it. Educated voters are going to make the right decision for themselves. And whether the money is back in that person or not, I understand, I 100% believe that the better candidate would prevail if the right message is put out. You can get mass marketing with word of mouth. Kids in a high school, they know about a party that's going to happen after school without one postcard, without one Facebook post, without no news media there, but word of mouth, right? So if you go and you re-educate that population on the importance of their rights and why that should be their priority, they will vote to protect that.
Let me add one thing to that. First of all, I think Tasha makes a really good point. It's not a matter of raising more money than the other side, but you have to raise enough to tell your story.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that your message is getting out. And there also needs to be another level, I think, of sophistication, not just among donors of color, but donors who are new to the process and maybe didn't come up in a family that had resources, but they do. It's a cultural matter as to whether or not it feels right to give money. And one of the things I think that happens is that, particularly in a presidential race, there's a lot of what you call bundlers. People go and they get their friends and they get them to give, and then they give that money and then they get credit for it. Well, there are quite a few black and Hispanic donors, but they're sprinkled in as part of other people's bundling.
Right.
And what you would like is to have minority leaders themselves become bundlers and come together so that when they deliver that money, it comes with a message.
Exactly.
So question for the audience, I mean, how many of you have actually given money politically? Oh, that's a good number for a crowd, okay. DC crowd of leaders, I guess I should expect that. How many of y'all know others who've given? Like, I mean, how many? Okay, a little fewer hands, okay. One of the things we've talked about, this is going to move from the elections to just advocacy. You know, Tasha, you run a trade association. You know, what's your advocacy strategy and policy, and how do you get people? I mean, you're a realtor, so I guess getting the money from your donors is a little easier than for others. But what's your fundraising strategy, and how do you utilize the money?
That's a good question, and I would say it's not easier, honestly, especially this year, since I'm going against the grain. The normal sponsors of ARIA have backed out away from me, and so what I did was I went back to the community, and for me, I had a strategy of going to every single corporation that is getting a tax subsidy from my state, and I told them point blankly, I want to see you give back to my community. And I expect you to donate, and this is how much the packages are, and that's how I fundraise. But I mean, you just have to tell people what you expect, and then they will deliver in the end. You have faith in your fellow man.
Mike, same question. I mean, you've had a nonprofit for years and been active. What was your fundraising experience and strategy?
My strategy was in the message. It was because our group, my nonprofit is called It's About Us. It was helping them understand the social, the economic, and the policy impact on our community, and helping them understand how you have government, you have politics, then you have policy. And those three are different. When you're out on the campaign trail, you're talking about the politics of the policy that you're going to put in that the government's actually going to enact. When you talk to people on the street, they say, I'm not into politics. Half of them don't even know what politics is. He'll tell you, the politics is what happens behind the closed doors, behind the scenes, the negotiations, and everything else. The policy is what comes out of that, and the government then implements that. And we have to understand that there are three different aspects of it. We seem to lump everything into one and then just throw our hands up and say we're not part of it. So what I had to do was I had to educate my donors and my constituents of understanding we need to change policies that are impacting our communities, from redlining to voting rights to all the things that impact us. And we have to be able to put some money behind it, some advocacy behind it when we don't have money. But if we have 2,500 voters and the last election, the individual won with 8,000 votes, we have power because now we can, we can change that result by removing that 2,500 and giving it to somebody else when there's 45,000 voters in the community. So you can be able to use it even if you don't have the money, right? You can still advocate in some ways by having the numbers behind you to be able to make change, to make policy changes and impact your community.
So Matt, hard question for you. Given the lack, and you tell me if I'm wrong about this, the minority policy advocacy groups are pretty far and few in between. Right? There aren't that many of them, and they don't really spend money the way the white groups, especially conservative groups, do. How do you raise money in this environment? How do you make an effective advocacy organization?
Well, you have to be painfully practical. First of all, with candidates, what I tell candidates is if you're not willing to ask your friends and your family for money, don't run. That if you don't expect the people who know you best to give to you and support your campaign, why is somebody who doesn't know you, even if they hear your pitch, going to give to you? So if you're a candidate, you have to do what we always call a Rolodex test. Go through your Rolodex and put next to the name the amount that you think they can give and the amount you're willing to ask them for. So in a very practical way, you have to do that, and that's harder. That's harder for new candidates. It's harder for candidates of color because they usually don't come from a background in which there's a lot of giving. But you've got to get people to be the first givers. The first givers. So from a candidate aspect, it's that. There's another, I think, even a more important aspect of giving in which underserved communities, or sometimes just communities of color, whether underserved or not, are given a bad deal. And that is that when you go to an organization and you ask for help, they might help, but they want to give it to a 501c3. They want to give it to something that you can't use it politically. Whereas when Republicans or Anglo groups come in, they write them hard dollars that go straight into campaigns. And so you got to make sure that we know we're sophisticated enough to say, that's great, I do want you to give that $25,000 or $50,000 to this 501c3 organization, but I also want you to put together $25,000 or $50,000 in hard dollars that we can talk to voters with.
Right.
Have you, and this is for all of you guys, I guess Tasha, I'll start with you. Do you guys play politically? Do you endorse candidates? Do you make contributions? Do you direct the spending on campaigns?
We back both sides. We're not allowed to align with one side or the other. We have to entertain both. And we do have fundraisers for both Democrats and Republicans.
Okay.
And we're one of the biggest lobbying arms in the U.S.
Okay. Same to you, Michael. I mean, have you, you're an elected official now and you've had a nonprofit, but do you engage in fundraising, and have you donated to candidates have you bundled or worked on those issues with candidates?
I have raised money. I have contributed and donated to other candidates. I mean, right now there's a city council races going on throughout the city, and while I'm also trying to raise money, I'm also donating to some of those candidates because naturally I'm going to need some allies when I get there. And also, since we're all campaigning, I need them now as well. So as I support them, I'm praying that they're supporting me, because I'm sending them the text messages to donate, because ultimately they're going to need me when I get there. The federal dollars are going to come through me, so they have more access than what they have now. So naturally, absolutely.
Matt, similar question to you, but in Texas, you have the Lone Star Project, and you have two organizations, the Lone Star Project and the other three organizations. But how, given this conservative Texas is, how many organizations are operating effectively, or what's the, like, how much more do the conservatives raise than the left of center guys raise in Texas?
Well, it's staggering in terms of the amount of money that gets spent on one side or the other. We just had the primaries in Texas last night, and Republicans probably spent somewhere in the range of $200 million just on their state house primaries.
State house.
They had contested primaries all over. You've got a lot of MAGA people running against just regular Republicans. What I always say is kind of the criminal Republicans running against the corrupt Republicans. but they spend a lot of money doing it. On Democratic side, you had some very, very important primaries going on. One, we nominated Colin Allred for the U.S. Senate to run against Ted Cruz. So remember that name. Colin Allred could very well become a U.S. Senator from Texas, and if you don't, that's a culture change. You have an African American man representing Texas in the U.S. Senate, but you have a lot of people who want to come to Texas that are national. I always say, come to Texas, but put your blue banners away and stop saying you're going to flip this and flip that. Come to actually do the hard work of electing people, but a lot of them come with just non-political money, the 501c3 money. So they all want to register voters, which is a good thing to do, or they all want to talk about progressive policies, which is a good thing to do. But that really is not where the rubber meets the road in terms of changing things. You have to actually elect people. Almost everything bad that's happened in Texas over the last 30 years happened because at some point a progressive or a Democratic candidate lost to an extreme Republican candidate. Not all Republicans are extreme, but that's where their party has gone. And so we have to reverse that. That means changing elections. That's why when I raise money, I wear a coat with a lot of pockets. I make sure that there are people that know that I can ask for hard dollars. I got a pocket for that. I do a lot of redistricting work. That's a really good thing to use 501c3 money for. I got a pocket for that. And then there's some other independent expenditure things that you can do partisanly, and I've got a pocket for that. So you got to be willing to first be practical, be informed about who you're talking to, and ask them the right questions.
So moving from money to some of the discrimination things we're talking about. I'll start with Matt on this one because I have a very specific question, and you guys can all weigh in. In Texas, I saw the legislature passed a bill that changed the way they qualified judges to be on the ballot, and we're talking about the idea that the rules keep changing for us, and that we're under this huge assault. Can you touch on that, and what do you see, because it'll spread to other states, right? So can you talk about that a little bit, and what that means, and how do we fight back against that?
Well, this is really the story of the South. It's not just Texas. That as the demographics are changing, the Republicans see the results, practical results of that clearer than Democrats do, and so they do things to mitigate the real changes that demographic evolution might bring, and so they systematically undercut the voting strength of African American and Hispanic voters. And part of that in Texas is to pass the most restrictive voting laws in the country. And also, even to file for office, they raised the standard to run as a judge in Texas, because in places like Harris County, Texas, which is a giant county, if it were a state by itself, it'd be bigger than 22 states. Well, every district judge office is held by a Democrat, and about 2/3 of those are people of color. And but what they did was they said that, okay, in order to run for judge, you have to have spent the previous years as a litigator. Now, there are a lot of very qualified attorneys who don't get involved in litigation. And the most damaging thing that did is in a place like Harris County, what it had then was some of the a few Anglo-Republican judges tried to disqualify black women running against them because of that Republican standard. I mean, that's how they get you. They turn us against each other. And in order to change that, you're not going to make an argument in Austin about it. We've got to win elections to do it. They're not going to change their mind. We got to change them.
Tasha, have you seen any of this in your, because you're in a highly regulated business and you've with politics, what change have you seen this affecting your politics at all in the places you operate?
What changes that have affected my politics? I'm not necessarily aware of specifically what changes, but on your last question, and to comment on the question now, I would say that is a perfect example of why voters need to be educated, why the public needs to be aware of what is going on instead of what parties are happening, instead of what concert is going to go down that weekend. You know, they need to be focused on the prevailing activities of the political realm so that they can be wary of what the consequences are going to be and so that they can be proactive to take the steps to adjust that. And so that is a perfect example of them raising the bar to prevent certain people to become judges to protect their community. If somebody was already in that position to stop that from happening, if somebody was already educated to know, I need to take the steps to get in a position, get my party in a position to protect our population, that wouldn't have happened. And so now, what do we do retroactively? We educate our people. I 100% believe we need to reinvigorate the grassroots coalition. Exactly what one of our panelists said earlier when I was a moderator is nobody goes and protests anymore. You don't need to be a member of Congress to take action. You don't need to be a judge to take action. What you need to do is be educated on what is happening around you in your political environment so that you know what you need to do to take the steps to either prevent that, reverse that, or fix that. But if you're not getting out there and speaking up, no one is going to hear you. No one's going to listen to you.
Mike?
What was the question?
You know,
Or just comment?
yeah, no, interesting, like, what do we do, okay, you're a candidate. You know, what would you want to see happen? What would you want to do if you were elected to try to make things different so that we're not facing this onslaught of just, you know, almost Jim Crow level changes?
My hope and prayer is that June 4th at 7 p.m. I'll have the votes to move on to the general election. And in between June 5th and November 5th, somehow, some way, I want to travel the country to really speak out and educate our community, to really help them understand exactly what Tasha is saying. The idea and the examples that I used earlier when I said I've talked to folks who were signing my petition and say, I'm good, I'm cool, I don't want to do that, I don't need that, is the very thing that we need to help them, educate them on. When I told them that you can vote out your, judge, you can vote this one out, you can vote that one out. The opposite is true as well. When you have good people in office, when you have good people in place, and we want to have judges that look like us because they can have the experiences that we've had so that when those sentences come down and those sentencing guidelines and things of that nature come down, they're able to address that and come at it from a different perspective. I wasn't talking to you. But we have to be able to recognize the power we have. The biggest thing that frustrates me, and I would talk about this on my talk show a lot, and Kevin would come on. The biggest thing that would frustrate me is the idea that we will look or listen to the talking points of, but we won't necessarily investigate it for ourselves. We'll only use one source. We don't use different sources. I had someone, an African-American woman, come up to me, tell me she was a Republican. I said, that's great, fine, everything else. And as she was walking away, she was trying to call me out. So naturally, the part of me that wasn't the candidate came out. And so when I called her out, then she wanted to roll back around and come back and talk to me. Oh, let's have this conversation. I said, well, let's have it. She wanted to talk about immigration and the border. I said, well, your boy just told them don't vote on it and let it go. No, he did not. No, he did. I said, look it up. Pull it up on your phone. Get your phone out and pull it up. She pulls it up on her phone and she sees that Trump says, well, that's ABC. I don't listen to ABC. I said, okay. I said, well, go to YouTube. She goes to YouTube and she sees Mitt Romney. Well, he's a sucker. I say, okay, see, that's the problem I have. See, when you're faced with the facts, you don't want to believe the facts. And sometimes we have to be faced with the facts of understanding that the rug is being pulled out from under us. Kevin and I have had this conversation back in 2020, that as demographics change, the policies are going to change to keep what's in place in place. The structural, racial biases are going to stay in place. We will be demographically the majority and socially and economically the minority. And we have to recognize that we have to be able to play in this field, play in this game, because it is a game, and we have to be able to prevail to be able to have the resources to do it. So, as Tasha's saying, instead of paying $300 to go to the concert, you need to be paying $300 to some candidate that's going to service and fight for your voting rights, your women's rights, your reproductive rights, and your job rights, everything. When this test tube baby gets over here, if he gets over here and we allow that to happen, everything we know today as being the democracy we have will change. And I'm talking about Donald Trump. That's the test tube baby I'm talking about. Okay? It will change. And so we have to recognize that, as we say all the time, when they tell us what they are and when they show us who they are, we have to believe them. Some folks don't want to believe it because it's conveniently for them. Evangelicals don't want to believe it because it's convenient for them. Right? But we have to believe it. Whether they do or not, we have to. And so we have to act and we have to respond.
Thanks. So I'm going to close out with this, and I'll start with Matt, and I'll ask this question, but if you have something else you want to say, please just do it. What's the future? I mean, how do we have to win elections, but what if we don't win the next election? I mean, what if we, what is the strategy? I mean, you've been fighting this fight for a very long time. What is the strategy?
Well, we all get...
and how do we make sure that even if we do win, because one of the problems we're having with black voters, that even when the side we want wins, we don't get our changes, our stuff?
Well, we all get weary of the notion that this is the most important election of our lifetime. Well, this is the most important election of our lifetime. That test tube he's talking about is the orange vial, and it's lethal. And so we really have to focus. And so, kind of building on what Tasha said, when we protest, we have to protest with a purpose. Right. And we can't just make noise, we have to make progress. And so we have to be very strategic. And it is about winning elections. The penalty for losing is perhaps our democracy. We have a whole movement that Donald Trump didn't create, but he really mobilized, of people who are scared and angry about the very notion of a multicultural democracy. They don't want that. Exactly. And so that's going to have to be built. And once we win, we have to quickly use the power that's held and gained in order to consolidate that power. Yes. Not in a bad way, but in a smart way. Yes. One of my biggest disappointments is that after President Biden was elected, and I don't blame him necessarily for this, I blame some people in Congress for it. Yeah. The first thing that should have been done was renewing the Voting Rights Act.
First thing.
The very first thing. But frankly, though, there were some very well-meaning progressives in the House that were arguing the perfect against the good. Well, the perfect's still in a drawer, and the good isn't getting done.
Right.
And so the first thing you do when you get power is to consolidate it. And Democrats, we have a tendency, the first time we gain power, we use up our political capital. President Obama spent 2 years with a majority. He spent the next 6 years with the Republicans trying to undermine him every single day. And so our goal, if we get power, is to consolidate it first.
I just want to add something to that really quick. So whether Republicans win or Democrats win, you shouldn't think of it as a win or a loss. Either way, you're still in this country. Either way, you still have a voice. Martin Luther King was not an elected official when he spoke up. Martin Luther King was not educated to go and speak in front of crowds. He had a passion, he had a vision and a purpose, and he used his voice. Nobody asked him, can you come and speak up for me? He decided, I have a voice and I'm going to use it, and nobody, no matter what they do, are going to silence me. So whether your party wins or loses, you are still sitting in this country. You still won. So the only thing you need to do is continue using your voice. Speak up, stand up. I couldn't care less if I'm an elected official or not. I get seats at the table because I won't back down. And I would confirm, I would tell you to do the same thing. Whether your party wins or loses, you still won.
So I won't belabor this, but I will say this about that. Dr. King was very true that he was very active, but took 10 years, and how many people died in the process? I mean, it wasn't like the couple of speeches was over. I mean, there was a lot of pain and suffering in that process, which, to Josephine's point, no one wants to get out and protest because no one wants to get shot.
The thing I would add to that, how much pain and suffering would have happened had he not spoken up? And how much longer would it have happened past that decade? We would still be sitting in that today. And so the toll sometimes is worth the end result. Unfortunately, there's going to be a toll either way, whether you speak up or you stay silent. The difference is you spoke up and you know your voice is heard. It may not have been listened to immediately, but what did he do? He ignited the fires of every person behind him. And that fight is still going on today.
Well, I so admire Tasha's passion and her idealism, but frankly, I'm just a crass political hack here. And let me tell you that all the good that Dr. King did that's been undone, that wasn't done by regular people out there. Yeah. That was undone by Republicans who got elected. Yeah. Yeah. And if we want to build this back, then it means a lot of people, the people that Tasha's talking about, have to get together and make sure that the people who are elected, the people who pass laws, the people who engage policy, are people who actually believe in a multicultural democracy. They believe in equal rights. They believe that our economy and the free enterprise system is best when there is an opportunity for all. We have leaders in one party now, and the Republican Party hasn't always been that way, but they're that way now. They don't believe in any of that. They believe in power for power's sake. It's not a matter of there being moderate Republicans and conservative Republicans. It is Republicans that want power.
That's right.
And I know that's probably more partisan than you wanted this to be, but that's where we are right now.
And I apologize, Matt, but
no,
that's the point where we're at. And I too. It will matter what party gets elected. Now, true, we may still be here. That is true. We may still be here, but to Tasha's point, what will we be like while we're here? Mm-hmm. Because the reality of it is, the orange test tube told us he will be a dictator on day one. His sycophants have told us that they are already planning and preparing to remove and put people in place that are going to do exactly what he says. When you have Republicans telling you, who supported and voted for him the first time, don't do it, don't be stupid, and sit at home. All right? I need you to think about it from this perspective. I don't know why I was doing this when I was doing voter registration, but the Supreme Court is vital. It has always been vital. And for whatever reason, Democrats have never thought about it being as vital as it has been. I don't know why we didn't recognize that in 16 when we were saying, okay, well, we want to be progressive. Fine, you want to be progressive, but like to Matt's point, don't be so perfect that you give up the good. Because right now you could have a 6-3 Democratic majority rather than a 6-3 Republican majority. And if you did not understand that whole message of legislating from the bench, Republicans will always tell you what they're going to do. They will always tell you what they're going to do. When they're coming at you saying, we don't want you to legislate from the bench, that's because they're about to do it. When they come and tell you, oh, well, everyone should vote, they're about to take your vote away from you. When they come and tell you, oh, we believe in women's rights, they're about to strip you from whatever you have. They're always going to tell you what they're going to do. And what you have to do is listen. Listen to what they say. Tell everybody in your family, Pookie, Ray Ray, and Shasha, take they behind to get registered and take they behind to the polls. They can do it absentee or whatever they do. But you better vote. Matt is not joking. Matt's from Texas. Okay? We know what the hell's going on in Texas. Now multiply that by 10 everywhere else. California, my home state, it'll be gone. New York, your home state, it'll be gone. Chicago in the middle, it'll be gone. Philadelphia, I'm telling you, if we don't recognize and don't get engaged and get involved from the grassroots to the protesting to the contributions to working for individuals, getting out there on weekends, making phone calls and doing it, you can only sit back and wait and say, oh, well. And then you're going to have to live through it. Because it will matter who wins this next election. And quite frankly, the next 4 years, it will matter again because that group that's in there now will come back and try to reinvent the orange test tube and think that one of them can take over. And that whole MAGA extremeness is going to grow and spread. And as it continues to grow and spread, like a cancer does, we're going to have to figure out how to kill it and rip its head off. And if we don't get this majority and expand those courts, I don't know, they're going to do it. I guarantee you, when they get the majority, if they get the majority, they'll expand it. I don't believe them when they say, oh no, we won't do that. Mitch McConnell said that when he was talking about President Obama's nominee, that he held up for a whole year and a half. And what did they do as soon as they're nominated? They pushed them through.
4 weeks.
Okay?
4 weeks.
In 4 weeks. Fastest time ever. So we have to be vigilant and we have to pay attention. Because if we don't, we are the only ones that we can blame.
I would add to that, paying attention and having a belief is one thing, but nothing will be done unless you actually take action on that belief.
Yeah, great. Well, we keep going, but we're out of time. Guys, thank you. Thank y'all for listening.